Okay, hi. So we're going to have a quick look at my book on part A. We'll just run through it quickly here. Uh, so we start with the first chapter. It's just basic knowledge of the keyboard, its layout, a method of how to remember visually the notes. We've got different keyboard sizes here. So very basic knowledge. As you go through the book, there's exercises too you can practice. Just introduction here to intervals. Um, we explain what a tone and a semitone is, and an octave. We just show you these. So this is extremely basic, the very first chapter. And the Western major scale in the melodic interval series, root note, tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. You memorize that. You can work out all your keys from that. Excuse me. We have a quick look at the guitar neck. I've just overlaid a piano on the guitar neck, so to find the keys, to find the notes, and also intervals. Explained how intervals work on a guitar. So it's very basic. A little bit about guitar rhythm. And frequency allocations. Anyway, so very simple beginning. So chapter 2 is where we start to get into it. The intervals, all the intervals. So the 12 intervals of Western major scales, and we come through. We name them all, and when we name them, I keep it as simple as possible, so there's not too many confusing ways to remember things. So the harmonic intervals are quite numbered. Okay, and they're all based on the Western major scale: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and back to 1 again, high 1. So we have minor second, minor third. We have a second, third. We got a fourth. We go minor 5, which is a diminished, and a plus 5 augmented, and a 5. But we just say minus 5 and plus 5. We don't need to say augmented. Sometimes we say it, sometimes we don't. 6, minor 7th, and the 7th. So they're all the intervals. There's only 12 to remember, and then your ear starts to actually learn them. Okay, so so more information here. We have the Western major scale. Just explains it. All the intervals in the Western major scales, what they are. So it talks about that. Interval inversions. We talk about what inversions are, interval inversions. So basically, there's a lot of theory in this book. So training the ear to hear intervals. So it talks about the process of how we train our ear to hear the intervals. And we'll talk about what an interval circle is. The next thing is the Western major scale, the most important scale in Western music, as all other modes, the minor keys, which is a Aeolian mode of the Western major scale, is just a mode of the Western major scale. And all other scales can be written in terms of alterations to the modes. All this gets explained in modes, in the mode section, which can get quite tricky. But as I said, the book from the introduction gets harder as you go on. Western major scale talks about that. Modal interval formula. So I'm giving you just highlights of what the book contains. Introduction to the circle of fifths. Okay, and what we use the circle of fifths for. It just goes through each key. Key of C shows you the notes. Key of C, and it goes through all the keys. Key of D. So all the 12 keys in the Western major scale. The major keys. We're not talking about minor keys. We talk about, in this book, I don't talk about minor keys. We talk about the modes, Aeolian modes, and you'll see that in the mode section, because a minor key is just an altered, well, there's 3 versions of the Aeolian mode: the natural, harmonic, and melodic. So anyway, we talk about that in modes. But so I'm not giving you a lot of information. I'm just giving you a quick look at the chapter to see if when you buy it, you know what you're going to get into. There's a lot of information. Take it slowly. I'm always here to ask questions, so we can book time. You consider it like a piano lesson. You do all the practice, and I'm just helping you with the theory by answering questions, and we go through the theory. But I develop ways to memorize things easier. They're all listed in the book. Um, okay, so we've got all the keys. Circle fifths again. We talk a little bit about that. One of the most important things in music is to learn your scales. You can't get even in classical music, whatever style of music, your scales are so important. Learning your scales. You notice in I never talk in this book about your thumb 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So your 1 starts on your thumb and goes outwards, because we describe melodies in terms of intervals. We don't want to confuse them with finger numbers. So we name the finger numbers in this book. So thumb, index, middle, ring, pinky. Okay. So, and I have a shorthand in how we name them. Left T is left thumb, or T is your thumb. And then we put the interval afterwards when you're learning a melody. So all that gets explained in later chapters. This is showing you the hand positions of when you're learning your scales. It's always good to have a music teacher there live to show you. Okay, that's fantastic to have that, right? But I'm doing my best in this book, and you can follow from left to right where your hands get placed. So if you have, it's all explained. If you have trouble understanding that, but you'll see you have a swing finger, 3, 7, 3, and comes back to high, and then you swing down. So I explain how that works. So I got all the keys here, all the finger positions for all the keys. You need to learn all your keys. There's no getting around that. But you start slowly. You start with one key, and then you learn the next key, learn how to improvise. Okay, so I've got a section here that I haven't finished, so I'll get that going before I this bit was just extra stuff. It wasn't that critical, but I'll finish that off. It's a little section. Scale exercises. So there's exercises to learn your scales. End of chapter exercises. There's just some chat exercises here. So throughout the book, it's not just theory. You can practice with exercises as well while you're going through. Chapter 4 is about chords. So it tells you everything about chords. So chords are just a collection of intervals. So intervals are so important. So we have interval collections. Chord character, what a chord character is, describes what you're hearing. So it's the selection of intervals you're hearing gives the chord its character. Chords and the relationship within a key. So what chords are within the Western major scale? So we go through all this. You learn all the sevenths chords. Right? So, and then you can learn how to alter chords to add any intervals you like. And that could be out of key too, the intervals you add. So note order, remembering chords. So we've got a way to remember chords. We've got methods of memorization. There's a lot of memorization methods in this book. Melody chords and learning songs. We talk about that. Finding chords quickly. How to find them very quickly. Using the fifths and octaves as references. Quickly locating fifths on a keyboard. So all these techniques of the way we learn is how to find these chords quickly and work them out. And there's 2 rules when finding chords that makes it much easier. And we talk all about that, and you can practice with exercises, finding your chords. Talk a little bit about power chords, which are just fifths. Hand shape and hand movement. Okay, talk about. We've got triads. We've got some exercises. Quickly locating all the intervals on the keyboard. Very important. How to find intervals quickly. And this talks about how to find major thirds. It goes through all the intervals and it tells you how to find them very quickly. One of the key of jazzing up your piano sound is knowing how to find your intervals quickly. It becomes second nature, and eventually you'll learn all your chords. And there's good online applications like Chordify is going to help you do that, which is a fantastic website. I'm not sponsored by them. I've just been using it for years. All right. All the default chords, so it talks about all the chords in the Western major scale, right? And they're all here. So we learn that, the first chord is a major, and then we have minor, minor, major, right? And then a 7th chord. You learn what a 7th chord is. It has a minor 7th in it. and then another minor chord, and then a diminished chord. So they're basic, and you're going to learn these off by heart. But the book helps you to how to memorize these things. It talks all about that. It shows you. It talks more about inversions here. Triad inversions talks about all the triad inversions. Chord naming, how we name chords. The name of the chord isn't as important as understanding what you're doing. You need to understand what you're doing to a chord. How we name it, a lot of it's self-descriptive. I've got a table here of all the chord names, and you'll find that it's a lot of it. There's a lot of chords, but when you read the chords, it's quite self-descriptive. Add 9, because you know what the intervals are. So X6, you're adding a 6 and add a 9. So anyway, but he talks about some important chords, suspended chords, full diminished chords, augmented chords, all about chords. Talks about chord stacking. What a chord actually is. It's just really stacked thirds. It talks about stacked thirds. Okay, and we go on. Chord ambiguity, what that means. Slash chords, which are just fifths. Slash chords are important because it gives you a reference point to find all your chords. If you know how to find fifths on a piano quickly, you can find all the intervals. And you use the fifth as your reference point to find all other intervals. For example, a 6 is just a tone up from a fifth. A fourth is a tone down from a fifth. Very simple. A major seventh is just a tone down from the root. A minor seventh is a semitone. A minor seventh is a tone down from the root. A minor second is a tone up from the root. So things like this, quick and short things to remember. Altered, what an altered chord is. So we've got information there. Something that I've worked out, the 55 triads, what that is. It's more of a maths thing. There's 55 unique ways to create a chord. Visualization is another important section of this book, and because there's a lot of visualization too, and it basically shows you a unique way to how to memorize your scales. And we break the piano up into two groups, group 1 and 2. You think of them as blocks, group 1 and group 2. And I'll show you an example of, you can see so this, what chapter? This is the thirds, right? Let's go up a bit. I just flew through this. Visualizing thirds and creating triads. So thirds are probably the one that's the hardest ones to remember, but they're not too tricky. But there's a way to do it that I've developed to make it a bit easier to understand. So you have to read this and to understand what it is. But you're going to have to visualize it. And basically, it's just grouping things together. For instance, if you know the third of a C sharp, you know G sharp. The shape is the same. Go up a bit. You're visualizing the white area, the black and white. Everything grey you're not visualizing. You're visualizing the white. You'll notice on the C sharp and on the G sharp that the shape is exactly the same. It's identical from here to here is identical. So you're killing two birds with one stone with a one visualization, that type of thing. All right, let's keep on going down. Visualization. Okay, and then so we go through visualizing thirds, which is probably the hardest, and then we had a visualizing fifths and how we find them quickly, and we have a couple basic rules which we discussed to find them, but they're all here, unique ways, and then we got visualizing scales, right? So C major is easy because it's all the white notes, no black notes. Start on C, end on C. Now we're visualizing, for instance, the G. If you look in the two groups, it explains. So you can see on the first group 1, group 2, it's the first black note of group 2. And then so basically it's all the white notes except the first of group 2, it's grayed out. So this scale, G scale, isn't starting on G. This is a way to visualize the scale, right? You can also visualize that you're starting on G and just got one sharp F sharp, right? But for instance, as you can see on D, right? So you can look at this and go, okay, it's all the white notes except the first black note of both group A and B. We've broken it into a chunk. The 2 white notes are group A. So the 2 black notes are 3 white notes underneath is group A. 3 black notes and 4 white notes is group B. So key of D is just C sharp and F sharp, the first black note of group 1 and 2. So we're creating different memory associations. So this book is a lot about combining different memory associations to make things. And that's how you remember things in life. If you can associate something together with something else, you remember it easily. And if you can create not hundreds of if you can create up to 3, that's pretty good. If you don't really need more than that, but 3 is usually good. So we try to create as many as we can, and usually only need a couple to remember it, and you can remember things much easier. So I go through all the scales and show you ways to remember. B major scale is easy. It's all the black notes, right? B major scale, it's all the black notes, and then there's E and B. So it's the white note on group the rightmost white note on group A, rightmost white note on group B. Once you practice this and you have it in your head, group A, group B, it's E, and you just know the B major scale. Okay, it's all black notes, easy. Okay, it's 2 white notes, right? And if it's a major scale, okay. We see the E. We're playing the note. We're not playing the note on the right. We're playing E, not F. Right? And the B. So where we're going here. Anyway, I explain it better than I'm saying it right now. It's all written down. That's why I write things down. Much easier to explain. B flat major scale. So we're flattening. So we're seeing here we've got B flat has 2 black notes. It's one memory association it has. It's group A and B. It's the right black note. So that's another association. Okay. So these things, and eventually visually, your visual memory just kicks in, and you visualize these scales quite easily. And with practice, of course, you've got to practice your scales. Anyway, knowing your scales is the building blocks of playing. It's the start point. From your scales, you can do a lot of alterations. Anyway, so we've got chords here. Okay, we talk about some chords. What else we got here? Dynamic chord visualization and improvisation. All this is in section. We're still in chords. Okay, we got out of chords. Scales and modes. This is as the chapter goes, it gets harder and harder. When it goes back to chapter 7, it relaxes again, and you start to apply techniques you've learned. So the part A is a lot of theory. It's more theory than practical, although there are practical things to do. Part B is more practical. Now we're actually going to learn how to play the songs, and we're going to use some of the knowledge we learned. Okay, so scales and modes. I'm not going to go through too much of this because it gets quite complex. But it talks about all the modes, the different modes: Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. Explains about them. Put it in a table. So keep on going. And it's got little secret hint things. Create scales in the key of C, then transpose later. Any tiny little secrets I put in. Scale inversions, you can invert scales. When you invert a scale, you get a mode. Let's get crazy. Okay, we're going to get a little crazy now. So it starts to get a little trickier, but if you read it slowly, of course I can answer any questions. And we continue. Altered Ionian. So we start to alter now modes. When you alter, if you have a mode as a starting point, you alter it to create other scales. Why are modes useful? The minor key signature, which is a natural minor scale. We'll talk about that, which is just an Aeolian mode, so-called fifths. So we keep on going. So all this, I've written all this Roman numeral representation of chords. The way I represent the chords in a scale is with Roman numerals, so we don't confuse them with the intervals. So when I talk about 3, I'm talking about in Roman numerals, capital I's. I'm talking about the third chord in the key, right? Which would be the minor 7th chord. All right, so melodic minor. So there's 3 flavors of the minor key, which are altered Aeolian, the natural Aeolian mode. It's 2 alterations. This is where a lot of the stuff I've developed, and it's new, never been seen before, that I've actually started to develop modal relationships, and these are very useful in composition when you're composing and improvising too. You can use these techniques to help you discover new sounds, new ways to play piano. You don't have to, you what happens is you develop what you like, the sounds you like. Sometimes you just don't like certain sounds because, when you're adding intervals in, you can make all sorts of sounds with the intervals. You can have a jazzy type sounds. The certain intervals I love. I just absolutely love the sound of. I love sevenths. They're just beautiful. I can put them anywhere. Can't put them anywhere, but if you put them in the right spot, they sound beautiful. But this shows you ways on how to compose, theorizes it. So I'm not going through any detail now, of course not, because you have to buy the chapter and read it yourself. I mean, there's a lot of information here. Modal chord equivalence, what that means. So keep on going through. I'm not going to bother explaining anything now because it is hard chapter. Modes is a hard chapter. But I've had one of my students went away and read it. I gave them the chapter and they came back and said, now I understand modes. So I've written it in a way that you can understand it. You have to read it slowly and then you'll get it. And of course I can always help answering questions. Modal alterations, modal equivalence, what that means. Pure and keyed modal scale represents. A lot of this is my invention. And I've defined a formula or a way that you can take because we know the modes of all the Western major scales, they're there on the piano. They're in the key of C, for example, there you can see them visually very easily. Any scale can be considered, any scale you like can be considered as a natural modal scale, like the Aeolian or Dorian, and you alter something. Alter one note or 2 notes. So you have the chord, and then you apply that to a chord. It gets explained in the book. You need to buy the book. It's $25, part A. And once you study this, and you can start to apply it in songs on part B. And your own compositions, you'll get to a point where you're creating your own music, improvising and then just composing new songs. Inventing scales using constraints. you find that a lot of scales, they constrain themselves. Like a five note scale is constraint. It's only got the 5 notes, and it brings constraints allow you to create sounds, different sounds. So I explain about different how do you go about that, and there's examples of different. I think somewhere here I've got examples of different scales. I've got a list of them that I've found. Some interesting ones I found on the internet, and I went through them and analysed them in terms of. It's got a few the whole tone scales. So it's starting to do a few here, chromatic scales. So these are just basic stuff. These ones. But then I got a list of more interesting scales. So the pentatonic, the major blues scale. So these are very common ones, scales, different scales. So this is my list here, and I found these on the internet, and then I've written the scale. So if you have a look, I'll just have a spend a little bit of time here. So a harmonic major scale. These are the intervals that make up the harmonic major scale. But instead of remembering all these numbers, you can remember as an Ionian flat 6. Now you know what an Ionian is. These are you'll know, because you know all your major scales, you know what an Ionian is. And I've represented all these in terms of, there might be a different, easier way to represent them, and there is. You can, when you do modal you can transpose these to another mode, and I'll show you how to do it, modal equivalence. Anyway, so Ionian flat 6. The concept here is you want the least amount of operations to remember it, because you can't remember like Ionian B flat, B3, B4, that's a bit harder because there's more things to remember. Ionian flat 6 easy, Ionian flat 3. But these are in terms of Ionian, so all these different scales we have on the left here. Now, if you come down here, I've translated these, I think I've done that, I'm pretty sure. Ionians to talk. I've done it. Where are they? Anyway, the more here, here they are. Okay. I'm not going to go through all that, but so those all Ionians now have been a modal modal equivalence. We've used modal equivalence to turn them from Ionian flat 6. We've left it there because Ionian flat 6 was simple, but we got a Dorian flat 4 R minus. You can write these numbers in terms of any of the seven modes, but you want a mode that has the least amount of operations. So this is my invention, and these are the use of these. What use is this? Well, it's the scale. You want an easy way to remember your scale, right? And it's harder to remember numbers, but it's easier to remember. There's a little error there. That shouldn't be. Oh no, that's correct. Sharp plus 5. It's easier to remember these things with the numbers. So Dorian remove. An R means a remove operation. So we know what a Dorian is. We know all the intervals in the Dorian. If we remove the 2 and the 6, we have this scale, minor pentatonic. So you can remember the minor pentatonic very easily in any key, not just one key, in all the keys, by knowing that it's a Dorian, remove 2, remove 6, that type of thing. Now this is complex. It is complex, but once you know the actual the scale that you want to write a song in, you can experiment with that. You just practice on the piano that scale, and then you can hear the sound it's starting to make, the scale, and then and then I work out a way how to, once you have your scale, to find chords out of that scale. This video is getting a bit long, isn't it? I don't want to go into too much detail. Altered chords, transposition, application. Anyway, this is all in chapter part A. So for $25, you get all this information. There is a lot. I mean, you could spend maybe a year on this, I don't know, or more. But there is a lot of information. rising stacked modal scales and what they mean. So a lot of this is new, never seen before. I've developed this, and it's all designed. A lot of this stuff's designed for composition to help you create songs. You know, through understanding, what you're doing. You could sit there and just muck around on what sounds good, but by understanding, you'll know what sounds good and you'll know how it sounds because you know how those intervals sound when you add them in. So and you'll be able to create music, knowing that I want to put a 6 in here. I know a 6 is going to sound good at this point, or I know this interval is going to be, it's going to work here. Right, so anyway, that's part A. I'm not going through part B. This is just part A, first part of the book. Okay, thank you for watching.